I have only asked certain people, but I've now earned the privilege to only accept money from people I really want, I know, and be very critical in the process. But I didn't have this privilege in the beginning. So I understand what people are going through. But the one question everyone should ask when starting a business, do I actually need money? So there are so many lean ways to bootstrap a business without having to raise money. And what I like about this ecosystem, we talked about this in December, what I like about Abu Dhabi, even in direct comparison to Dubai, I think it's still younger and there's so much opportunity to get things right from the get-go by building the right ecosystem, maybe having the right people that come here, speak to people, start spreading the word and learning a lot from the mistakes others have done. Not so much all the things they have done well. And I'm absolutely a friend of I tell you when I have screwed up, and I've screwed up many times, big times, but I'm confident sharing it about all the things that haven't gone well. And so, yeah, the first question should be, should you raise money? But to your point, in any process, assuming there is such a thing as a linear process, when you come up with an idea, ideally you want to bootstrap for as long as possible. So you either have a family that supports you or friends, or like in my case, you have a job that gives you the opportunity to set aside money, or you have saved money with the purpose of starting a business when you had a good and well-paying job. So there are many ways to get the first phase started. But for me, the bootstrapping phase should really be having a product. It doesn't mean when you bootstrap that it has to be successful, but you have to at least prove to yourself, as well prove to possible friends and family or early investors that you are capable of doing something. And this can mean you manage to build a website that proves out a concept, or a very simple app, minimum viable product, that's what we call it. Or you have a product, a physical product, at least a very rudimentary kind of demo that you can show. That's what the bootstrapping, at least in my world, should be. And then I would feel comfortable reaching out to possible follow-on investors, angel investors, but more traditional angel investors, where you can say, listen, I have now this product, and here's what I want to achieve with this product. So I need the money to accomplish a further development, improvement of the product, the website, the app, a physical product, and that's what the angel money should be. And once you move from angel to sort of seed money, that's when you start basically getting some traction, whatever it is. You have a website, meaning users are coming to the website, they start engaging and using it. For example, if you have a website that has a subscription service, so the first metrics are how many are actually going to the website, how many are purchasing something on the website, remain on the website, return to the website. Those kind of things you want to start measuring, and that's important to keep that in mind. So you have some kind of metrics. And when you move on to the bigger guns, the institutional investment, anything Series A, Series B, Series C, but to be frank, here in the region, a Series A can as well be a seed round because it is a little bit differently structured here as opposed to the United States. But when you go to the more serious institutional investors, you want to have actual metrics, you want to show them you have something that if they invest money, it's scalable. So that the money is going directly to fueling the machine rather than having to invent the machine or make sure that it works somehow. Does this make sense?
The question of equity is always a contentious one, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
As a founder, you try to retain as much of your company as possible, but then you also do need money to grow. So how do you reconcile that? And what do you think, having been an entrepreneur and a VC, what do you think is a reasonable amount of equity for founders to give away when they're looking for funding?
So there are a couple of things I learned along the way when it comes to equity. If the equity is worth a lot, meaning you get access to people, either individuals or funds that can provide money, knowledge, and network, something so valuable that can really help to push and grow your business, I personally would be willing to give up more than, for example, not getting the full set or service of what a possible investor as an individual or investment fund can provide. in general, and this is also taking into account regional differences. For example, if I'm in Silicon Valley, where you have absolute insane valuations, you have nothing, and you can get valuations of $3, $4, $5, $6 million. It's possible. Here, people would say, get out of my whatever. That's not going to fly. You also need to take into account local circumstances, the local ecosystem, and this is very important as a young founder to understand that whatever you would get as a deal in the United States, and any differences between Silicon Valley or San Francisco and Boston, valuations are better there. But it's not just only about valuation. It's really about having the means to create more value with what you get an investment. So I cannot give you a specific answer, but what I can do is describe the circumstances, the framework that entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs should consider when raising money. So take into account local circumstances, make sure you understand the difference, and there are great platforms like here in the region you have Magnitt, right? MAGNITT, sort of a business intelligence platform. You can get some good data. You have Crunchbase, for example. That's a very good platform where you have comparisons. You have PitchBook, which is it's very hard to access because it's sort of a B2B service. And we are actually launching on the investment fund. It's a really cool thing that it's sort of a hack for acquiring more users coming to the site. But we're going to launch something globally where you can literally see in one page what the valuation mean and median valuation is in certain cities and the industries. And we're going to do this globally. We're currently developing this actually. And it will be launched on our fund site. So this type of information will be easily accessible for the industries we invest in. Because normally the data is sort of locked and we just make it a little bit public by shifting and whatever. Yeah. So we make this public because it's so meaningful, I think, to entrepreneurs to have a benchmark. So to your point, and you can even use places like AngelList for those of you who have heard about it. So there are a lot of platforms that you can use. I'm a big fan of Quora and Reddit. So whenever you need something and you are uncertain about valuation, for example, these are great platforms to get started with. I like the community feeling or base behind the idea. You can get a lot of knowledge actually by accessing these platforms and just asking people in general. But to bring it down to a few things, local circumstances, so make sure you have an idea, talk to people, to as many as possible, talk to as many investors as possible, and try to get the best deal. Ask yourself, do I have to raise money? And if so, think about sort of the linear approach and what you have to accomplish for each, sort of as a personal memo to yourself that I should only raise money if I accomplish these sort of milestones. Be creative, and I think only the ones who really hustle or want to hustle deserve to be funded. A lot of people just go there in with the idea, yeah, you have to fund me, otherwise I can't do anything. I mean, like, there's a disconnect. If you come to me like, listen, you're my guy, invest in my company so I can start building something. That is the completely wrong approach. I mean, literally, it's like, it's dependent on me or what, right? No, it's not. I'm in it with you to help you grow further or get better at what you're doing. But if you come to me telling me that you can only do it if I'm with you, then no, that's a complete wrong approach. Does this make sense? Have the right mindset. Do your homework, talk to people locally, go to online platforms, ask questions. It's so simple what I give away, but it's just something that most people wouldn't necessarily consider.
And I'll ask you one last question before we open it up to the audience. What's the difference between an incubator and an accelerator? Because people are going to apply for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, and without the face-to-face interaction, how do startups stand out when they're applying for such programs, let's say online?
So, as far as I understand, I've written about this, so I just told it, for those of you who, you can either go to our website, thegreedyfund.com, and sign up for just go to our startup lexicon, but I'm also one of the top 10 writers globally on Quora. So you can just look for my name, I'm not sure if it's somewhere, I can tell you later, just look for my name, and I've answered a lot of these questions, similar to I don't know, how do I raise funds? How do I find a co-founder? What is an incubator? So for those of you who want to learn more, you can just go there to Quora or our website. But to the point of what is an incubator, as far as I understand it, the incubator is a place that basically provides you with perks such as a mentorship network, the people you can actually help you. Perks such as accommodation or an office space, a co-working space. They don't necessarily have to invest in you. Most oftentimes they don't, but they take equity. At least a lot of them do. There are some free ones, but a lot of them take equity for just providing these services to you. So keep that in mind when you actually start looking for one, and ask yourself, is it worth it? Sometimes, if an incubator has a really great community and sort of the WeWork mentality or spirit that you get exposed to many different people, which can work quite well, keep that in mind, especially if an incubator is asking to give away equity, and some of them actually are quite generous. They take, I don't know, between 5 to 10%. Ask yourself, is it worth it, right? Make sure that the people who are involved are good, that the community is good. Get a feel, because it's like spending money. You wouldn't necessarily spend money and put it into a black box. You would have a rough idea of what you're spending the money for. And that's similar to equity. Keep in mind it's equity, and if your company becomes worth something, this equity is worth a lot more, and then it hurts when it's less than could be there. An accelerator is a place, for example, Techstars is one, Plug and Play here is one. They provide sort of a full service, a startup entity, well, a full service entity. They provide anything from the perks that I talked about, a co-working space, mentorship. They provide access to strategic partners to some extent, but they also provide funding as a kickoff, and they also oftentimes have a network of follow-on and co-investors. So it's sort of a bridge in, incubator and accelerator. And a co-working space is just a co-working space where they have a community without any other strings attached.
How does a company stand out when they're applying? For example, companies that are going to apply for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, how do you stand out when you just sending an application online and you can't convince anybody face to face?
So
what's a good, or maybe a good pitch deck? What are the good components?
So that's a little bit of my specialty, and the background here. When I moved to the US, some of my classmates at Hopkins, when it was time to start applying for jobs, right? The US is a very, very competitive place. And the one thing, talking about competitiveness and now bringing it to my own experience in the private sector, you need to stand out. And how do you stand out? Most companies, and I'm kind of like smiling at people now that tell me, oh, I'm writing a cover letter, or I'm actually applying online. They have sort of this application form. That is literally the worst thing you can do, the absolute worst thing. If you want to stand out, you need to be creative and you need to invest work. How do you stand out? Number one, you need to understand who is involved in the process. Do your homework. If you apply for an incubator, figure out who are the decision makers within the incubator. It's not really easy to find out. You just go there, you do a little bit of business intelligence gathering on the ground, you understand actually who right there is involved. Maybe you even invite the person for a coffee, just a friendly chat. The one thing I've learned being on the entrepreneur side, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. So keep that in mind. Just go out there and go and ask for advice. You never know. Sit down, try to understand. And oftentimes, you can gather so much more than just from a website. It's sort of the business intelligence. And once you have identified, as an example now for an incubator, the people involved, ask them for their email. And if they don't, you know what, there are so many tools. So I'm a little bit of a growth marketer, hacker, meaning I find pretty much ways I can contact anyone. I have ways and tools to make that happen. I'm happy to share in private some tools with you. It's easy, it's so cool. You can just easily gather and get access to anyone. So I mean, I'm not stalking, do not misinterpret. It's just about a friendly access to, because oftentimes maybe they don't want to have business cards or something, but I'm a hustler. I've always been a hustler. And I have creative ways of getting things done. So go there, do your work, contact the person. The one thing about emails that's so important, subject line. So many people miss that. You can have a blockbuster subject line and people open it. But if it's an ordinary subject line, they won't open it. It will go under. And have a great email. Keep it short, keep it succinct, put in some hyperlinks. If you want to pitch yourself as an incubator, record a brief video. You now take your phone, you have a tripod, you place it there, a cool location. You show them how funny and cool you are. Stand out. Create a video, it takes you a few minutes, no editing, just you and the founder or whatever. Show them how cool you are and give them something new, something different. What's great about this ecosystem, again, I would argue, without knowing the details, it's easier to stand out here because it's still less competitive. Take advantage, go for it. You can, with some tweaks here and there, you can stand out, you can make it happen very easily. I call it hacking, I love the word hack. It's like hacking yourself into things. And in the process also building the right network. So yeah, understand who you are dealing with. And I can give you this example of, do you think it's easy to get something published even for me today by the World Economic Forum? Trust me, this is the most political thing ever. I've been hustling over the past 3 weeks ever I came back from Davos, only to accomplish one thing: finding my internal champion. And last Friday, I found my internal champion. I got such a raving introduction that they couldn't resist and say no. When someone got back and said, okay, let's talk, and I'm talking to someone, to the key decision maker on Thursday, and it's likely that they will publish it. So boom, it's the World Economic Forum. Once we are there, the sky's the limit. So I became better over time, translating ideas into reality. I'm hustling as much today, but with a precision, an efficiency that I never had before. So you need to hustle and fail, but you need to hustle to become better at what you are doing. And right now, whenever I want to accomplish something, someone tells me something. In my mind, I already have a mental model in place how I get from the idea to execution. Bam, 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 bam. I can tell exactly how to do it, what to do, what tools to use, and then make it happen. And I'm obsessed with this stuff. I mean, I literally enjoy it so much. I just recently, it was so funny, there is in Boston, because it's such a medical hub for medical devices and biotech, for a day, I was asked by the German accelerator to come over and teach them some techniques of how to find companies, because they are doing nothing but providing paid mentorship to companies from Germany, like for example, like you guys want to do, to come to the US. And whenever I spoke to people there, it seems like I knew more about companies than they did. And I finally taught them the techniques that I have, and they were so incredibly grateful that I've taught them the techniques. It's very unconventional. I've even helped big venture-funded companies or corporations doing the exact same thing. They just had no idea that certain tools exist. I can automate anything. When I use LinkedIn, I just push a button and that's it. And then I go out to the beach and LinkedIn does the rest for me. Fully customized, automated. Those things I'm so obsessed with. And I started, learning to code along the way. I'm learning every day. And that's just so blessed, because that's what makes a difference at the end of the day. It's not so much how much money you make, but the skills you acquire along the way. Do entrepreneurship for the right reason, and then just kill it. Just boom.
All right, and with that...
That was the capital, I'm sorry. I just got carried away, no. I also just, my apologies.
So with that, we'll open to the audience. We'll take 1 or 2 questions before we transition.
You have to ask questions, otherwise I go wrong.
And don't forget that Marcel is one of the top 10 writers on Quora, so if we don't get a chance to cover your questions here, you can look them up on Quora and
send questions, actually. I'm going to answer
questions them. And then you'll get a detailed answer in a TED Talk as well.
I'll just speak up because I think so if you say that Abu Dhabi's got a virgin ground for entrepreneurs, what are the areas that you would identify would be the most successful to start off? Would it be healthcare, sustainable energy development, coding, whatever?
So one gentleman right next to you, I think, is the main expert, but what I see about Abu Dhabi and the way it's set up its infrastructure, it's still young infrastructure, everything is geared towards fintech. It's because of ADGM, it's because of favorable regulation, it's because of the people that were hired from Singapore, right, for the most part, that are running ADGM. So I think, but this is my external perspective of having explored the ecosystem a bit. I think fintech is going to be big for Abu Dhabi in particular. I think there is a chance that the Cleveland Clinic, now as sort of the poster child of hospitals with a big name, might even support healthcare. By the way, I honestly believe, and this is not my being biased or speaking as someone who's biased, healthcare is the one area in the entire region that's completely underfunded, and it is so urgent. I'll give you an idea from a public health epidemiological point of view. The obesity crisis in the region is severe. And there are great ways, better ways, how innovation can apply or technology can apply to tackle it. Most investors are afraid because they don't understand it. Healthcare takes longer than traditional investments. I don't care. I mean, I understand it. We understand. We have an amazing team behind it. But healthcare is one things that underrepresented. So, but in general, when I speak for the region, and that's my almost citing actually research or business intelligence that I've found, big topics in the regions are e-commerce. I mean, you have the big competition between Souk and Noon, for example. You have other smaller ones. You have education. That's really big because there is a shift and a change that needs to happen. You have fintech as one area. Healthcare, which I think is also important. Transportation is a big one. Insurtech is another big one. The one thing that I find so interesting, and that's more like the macro perspective, what excites me about the region as opposed to Boston, and I love Boston from every point of view. When it comes to investment, I wouldn't go there. But I'm also a little bit the risky one, the crazy one maybe. What I love about the region is, despite the wealth that exists in the region, right? It's still to some extent an emerging ecosystem, meaning you have all these verticals that eventually determine and are being used to present and build an entire country or ecosystem. And every single vertical is on the one hand interconnected, and it's growing. And that is so fascinating to me. Give you an example. If I decide today as a traditional investor to invest in a clinic, right? Maybe somewhere here in Al Ain, which is a little bit outside of Abu Dhabi, right? I invest in the clinic. I have now an incredible fancy clinic, but I have no roads leading to the clinic. I have a problem, right? So that's just a very simple example of how different industry verticals actually come together. And in emerging ecosystems, almost everything comes together. There might be a difference in opportunity in each, but at the end of the day, everything is growing. Everything has a necessity. And this is what I really like about the region. It's almost digital first. So it's very service driven, and there's a big opportunity when it comes to these type of investments.
Next question.
Hi. So I run a company which is a build tech startup. It's been for a few years, and we're now at a stage where we're growing pretty quickly at a regional level, and actually a bit more than regional. So the question I have for you is, when you're growing your business at such a fast scale, I guess, between all the different cities you're going, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing with this kind of rapid growth, and how did you overcome them?
So when it comes to growth, and you've never experienced it before, you will not just experience these so-called pain points due to the growth, but it's interrelated. There are so many different areas. HR. If you grow, you need more people. If you hire faster, you are at risk of losing the early company culture you've built, and by doing so, you might risk actually to completely lose your business. Because as an early company, let's say you have 3 people as founders, maybe 1 employee, and then you start growing. If you have 1 toxic hire in the beginning, your company it can actually fail by hiring 1 wrong person at the very early stage. It doesn't matter when the company reaches, 60 plus people, but in the beginning, that's one critical element. So the HR, the technology component is important. When you start investing and scaling a business, you need the solid technology. You better make sure that you have the right people. Let's say you have a technology business, a CTO who understands scalability. So hiring someone young can actually come at a huge risk unless he's an absolute capable person with tremendous learning capabilities and a great support network. And yes, that works. We talked about the HR piece. the regulatory environment becomes important. The admin side becomes very important. There are several important, and the founders themselves, talking about company culture, the element that is so critical with what we are doing. You can actually, even with the smallest possible company, 2 people sitting there, 3, already have an established early brainchild of what the work culture is supposed to be like. A lot of companies, even at the early stage when it's still feasible and doable, fail to establish such. They have literally no idea what a company DNA should be like. They don't invest in such, and they don't deem it to be important. And that's so critical. When you start building a company, you need a core DNA. If you don't have it, it's going to be really bad for you. Does this make sense?
So is that the CEO's main role, is to keep the culture going? Or?
So, well, here at the beginning, a little bit a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
You are literally doing everything. That's why I have quite diverse skills. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but you are acquiring all these skills in the growth process, and that's what you really need to understand. You need to grow out of your mindset, out of your role of being a jack of all trades, and you need to start in a successful company beyond, let's say, 60 plus people, on the way to 60 or more. You need to accept your new role as a leader of the company, meaning you detach from the day-to-day on the ground, hands-on job, and you become more the leader. Someone taught me that, a very successful CEO. You need to start developing your ability to listen, because you want to know what's happening in the company. Why are people unhappy? How can I address this? You want to develop your empathy. I was initially someone who's quite harsh, and not necessarily because I'm a bad person or anything like that. But that's also a difference between, for example, the German and the U.S. culture. In the U.S., you have to. I've learned this along the way. You have to be more diplomatic, but Germans are pretty straightforward, and a lot of people consider it to be very rude. So I've had to learn sort of in between to make it happen. And yeah, so empathy. You need to understand why people might be mad, or you need to understand basically how to address their concerns. And communication. As a leader of a company in a growing business, you need to be able to communicate with your people why you are doing things, what you are doing and why you are doing it. You want to make sure that those people are connected to the company, especially at a growth stage. They understand where the company is heading. Don't be too secretive or private. A lot of companies are getting it completely wrong. If you have these people on board from the beginning, I'm telling you, you have a great loyal army of people that can help you build an amazing company. They will help you find other amazing people, and they will make it an amazing experience and work culture. Does this address your question?
Yeah, it does.
So initially it's jack of all trades. That's pretty much it. Unless you're a wealthy guy, you can just hire people from the get-go. But to me, that wouldn't be worth it. But you're moving or transitioning from a jack of all trades to become an actual leader that can listen, has empathy, and great communication.
We'll take one last question. Victoria?
So you have mentioned that you mentored a few startups. Are there any particular issues startups face due to being in this region?
All the same, actually. Funny
Is there
enough.
any
Yeah,
difference, or-
literally. I have this title. So we actually, funny enough, in about a week from now, also very new, we are launching a YouTube channel. So if you are too lazy to read, you can just watch them. And it's part of the Gritty Fund, but it's a title that I came up with since I'm actually a medical doctor. I call myself the startup dog. So similar to being a general practitioner, for example, if a patient comes in, I can immediately look at the person and I have an idea what might be wrong with this person. I know what questions to ask, and by doing so, I can come up with a diagnosis, and the diagnosis can lead to a treatment. And the exact same analogy, logic applies to investing or even mentoring companies. So what I felt like doing this, I'm like a GP, general practitioner, because the issues in an early stage companies are all the same. Literally, I've done it now a few times. If you come to me, I can probably tell you in less than 2 minutes what's wrong. And I try to do so by being succinct and tell you exactly what's wrong. Whether or not you listen is up to you. But if you listen, you will be able to fix it very quickly. Yeah, but that's literally the comparison. You're like a GP. People come in with high blood pressure, they have diabetes, all this stuff that, but it's exactly the same with companies. And regardless of the industry, I feel like 10% in industry vertical is domain core expertise, like fintech, for example, or other areas, healthcare, but 90% is absolutely transferable. I was mentoring